So this lifetime we have faith in the Dharma and we also have the opportunity to do something with that faith. You know, some people may have faith, but they live in a country without freedom, or they have severe health problems, so they can't practice. But somehow we have that connection with the Dharma and the receptivity and the willingness to practice, and we have the conditions allowing us to do so. So it's a very rare opportunity in samsara to have all these kinds of conditions together. So it's something to really take advantage of and not squander. And so in one way we're very important as individuals because we have a precious human life, and by practicing the Dharma we can really do something good for society and for sentient beings. On the other hand, we're quite insignificant in terms of our self-centered thought because the world does not revolve around us and what we want and what we think. So this may seem like two contradictory views upon ourselves, but actually they fit very nicely together when you understand both of them. And when we do, it gives us great energy for practice and not very much energy for thinking that we're the center of the universe and that everything should go our way. So let's try and develop that attitude, work for the benefit of sentient beings, use our life wisely, and go on the path to our ultimate aim of the 4 Buddhakayas. So there's a question here. The meditator that begins with meditating on a clay disc, has that meditator establishing the preliminary work sign, followed by the learning work sign, and then the counterpart sign arises and access concentration is attained. So while imperfections are seen in the learning sign, the counterpart sign is brighter and more purified. Luminous, beautiful, and vivid, it has no physical color or shape and is only an object, and is an object only of mental consciousness. Releasing the image of the clay disc and transitioning to attending to something with no physical color or shape is quite extraordinary. At this point, is the object the nature of the mind? No, this is the counterpart sign, the counterpart nimitta. When it says it has no physical color or shape, it means that it's not like the clay disc that was your preliminary working sign, which was an actual physical object with color and shape. Yeah, your learning sign is going more in towards it being a mental image. And then the counterpart sign is just an object of mental consciousness. Okay, so there's no external physical thing that corresponds to it, whereas with the previous 2 signs there was an external physical object that you could refer to, you know, in your meditation if you need to. Yeah. So here the object is not the nature of the mind. The object is that nimitta, that small sign. Okay? And it's only an object of mental consciousness because there's nothing external to see at that point. Okay, is that clear? Okay. So, just to review a little bit of what we went through yesterday, which we went through quickly because I think many of you have had teachings on that before, but just to emphasize a few points on it. With the 5 faults and 8 antidotes, although the 5 faults are listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's not that that's the order in which you eliminate them, okay? Because laziness isn't completely eliminated until we gain pliancy, and pliancy is developed all along, but we really perfect it, only at the 9th stage and after. Actually, only after the 9th stage. Yeah. So there's some kind of laziness all along until we get to the pliancy, okay? So we have to deal with that all along, the mind that procrastinates, puts herself down, and so on. Forgetting the instruction is losing the meditation object. Again, that's going to happen more at the beginning of the 9 stages, but it's not just at the 1st and 2nd stage. It can go on until, so the 5th stage is the mind can stay on the object almost continuously without wandering. But it's not really until the 6th stage, that you're never forgetting the instruction, okay? And the antidote, the mindfulness, has to be practiced from the 1st stage all the way through. Yeah. And then laxity and excitement, we have the coarse forms and the subtle forms, so they're going to appear at different times. The coarse forms are going to be problems earlier, and they're going to both interfere with and make us forget the object. Yeah, because coarse excitement takes our mind off the object. Coarse laxity, we're like going in that direction too. Yeah, almost losing the object. So, although introspective awareness is the antidote for that, to actually bring your mind back to the object, you have to have mindfulness to reinvigorate the object, okay, which is counteracting forgetting the object, okay. And then really remembering that stability and clarity are the 2 characteristics that you want to develop. Stability, the ability to stay on the object without wobbling or wavering, and clarity, the mind being very clear and able to apprehend the object clearly. Okay, so excitement primarily interferes with stability because it takes us off the object, or the subtle excitement is about to go off the object. Yeah, and laxity primarily interferes with clarity. Yeah, because the coarse laxity, you've really lost your clarity and almost off the object, to the point where you're almost off the object, and subtle laxity, where the intensity of the clarity has gone down. Okay. And then the last 2, over-application, non-application and over-application, those come at the end, Well, actually, non-application we can have throughout, We may know something's arisen and we don't apply the antidote, so we have to really apply it. Yeah. And over-application could probably come through all 9 stages too. Yeah. So it really takes, some working with the mind and identifying different mental factors. This is why studying low rig, mind and mental factors, is very helpful so that you can identify these parts of the mind and know how to subdue certain ones and increase other ones. Okay. And then the 9 stages. I was thinking, I've always had this question because the 5 hindrances that we went through in the Pali tradition are also found in the Sanskrit tradition. And I'm wondering where Maitreya got these 5 faults and 8 antidotes. Was there a Mahayana sutra that spoke of them? And if so, why, isn't it mentioned? Or is this just that, in the process of subduing the 5 hindrances, then there's some specific things to look out for. And so Maitreya pointed out these 5 faults and put together the 8 antidotes as a way of getting us to pay a little bit more attention to certain aspects of the 5 hindrances. Yeah. So it's just a question I have in my mind sometimes about, the development of teachings and where the ideas came from. Okay, then the 9 stages, really show us kind of the general progression of where we start and, what's eliminated first, what power we use, what mental engagement is prominent, and then the same thing with, just showing us all the stages. Yeah. So again, these stages are general guidelines. Yeah. I don't think we need to get fixated on, I'm at stage 3.73. Not quite stage 4 yet, but not at the beginning of 3 either. It's like, don't get carried away with that. Just use it as a guideline so you kind of know where you are. Okay? And now then we'll keep reading for, on page 110 about serenity and further meditative absorptions. So after attaining the 9th stage, we must still attain mental and physical pliancy. So they don't come until we attain serenity, okay? We must still attain mental and physical pliancy and the bliss of physical and mental pliancy. Some people are able to do this quickly after they attain the 9th stage. Others must meditate for weeks before attaining serenity. So Asanga defines pliancy as a serviceability of the body and mind due to the cessation of the continuum of physical and mental dysfunctions. It has the function of dispelling all obstructions. Okay? I'm not totally satisfied with the English word pliancy. Some people use flexibility. One of my friends suggested responsiveness. Your body and mind are responsive. Yeah? So that, I like that word, responsive. But pliancy, responsive doesn't necessarily indicate the pliancy, flexibility, of this mind. In other words, this mind isn't rigid. Yeah, you know how when our mind gets rigid, we're very inflexible? Like, in a gross example, I'm attached to my opinion and I'm not going to listen to anything else. Okay? So a rigid mind can't do very much. A mind that is more flexible, can be more responsive to situations, can understand things better. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that we're aiming for. And it's also a serviceability of the body too. The body and mind, so the two of them go together. And so when you actualize serenity, your body is no longer a problem for you. Yeah? So, it's not like you're constantly getting interrupted. My knees hurt, my back hurts, I'm hungry. I'm bored with this meditation object. Why can't we do something different? There's none of that when there's serenity, because you're single-pointed and, your body is not giving you any kind of problem at all. Okay? Which poses an interesting question to us. Why does our body give us so much problem? Yeah. What role does our mind play? Yeah. If when you're single-pointed, your body does not give you any problems, then why, when we're not single-pointed, does the body give us so many problems? Yeah. Well, obviously karma is ripening. Yeah, that's something, that's going on. But to what extent does our mind influence what karma is ripening? And to what extent does our mind react to the karma? And what I was talking about the other day, about there's the physical pain and the mental pain, and when you get into the mental pain, it makes the physical pain worse. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing to kind of think about, that, you may have a body that has a lot of pain right now and discomfort, but the same body, when you attain single-pointedness, when you're absorbed in meditation, is not going to give you any problem. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Now, when you get up, if your leg is still stiff and you have a hard time standing up, I don't know. But definitely when you're meditating, your leg, you're not going to be aware of your leg falling asleep or anything like that. Okay? So physical dysfunctions are related to wind energies and make the body heavy and uncomfortable when engaging in virtue. Okay, so the wind energy is the prana, or in Chinese, the qi that's running in the body. And there's different levels of wind energy. Some of it is gross, and it has to do with our senses, that helps it's functioning when we're cognizing sense objects. Other energies have to do with digesting food and going to the bathroom and, muscles and, your muscle strength. So there's all different kinds of energies. But the physical dysfunction is related to these energies and makes the body heavy and uncomfortable when engaging in virtue. So that's why you have, if you go to Chinese countries in the morning, very often you'll see people of all ages outdoors doing qigong or tai chi or something like this, because it works with the different energies in the body, and it can really, improve health and reduce pain. And that's why they do acupressure and acupuncture as well, because it works with those energies and they affect how our body functions. Okay, then mental dysfunction prevents us from enjoying eradicating afflictions. Yeah, so mental dysfunction, this is such a drag. It's so much work. It's so burdensome. I want some amusement here. Yeah, so not serviceable, not flexible or receptive. Okay, so increased familiarity with concentration overcomes physical dysfunctions. Yeah, because you're working, as your mind gets more concentrated, the winds start to change. Yeah, and that's also one reason why we sit, with our hands like this, because it helps with the circulation of the winds. Okay, so increased familiarity with concentration overcomes physical dysfunctions. At this time, a sense of bliss and a pleasant tingling sensation occur on the head because dysfunctional wind energies are exiting from the crown. Immediately afterwards, dysfunctional mental states are overcome and special mental pliancy is attained. This is a serviceability of mind, lightness and clarity, coupled with the ability to set the mind on whatever virtuous object we want. Okay? You're not at shamatha yet. You're getting there. Not yet. Okay? So you're overcoming physical dysfunction. That leads, you have the sensation, the bad airs leading from the crown of the head. Yeah. And then immediately afterward, this dysfunctional mental states stop, and you have special mental pliancy. Okay. So if you look, remember at the beginning, it said we must attain mental and physical pliancy, and then the bliss of physical and mental pliancy. So that's the order it occurs in. Okay, so here we've attained the special mental pliancy. So special mental pliancy induces serviceability of the wind energies flowing through the body as the wind energies that power the affliction subside. So in this whole section, we're really seeing how the body and mind influence each other on the level of the wind energies and what's going on in your mind. Okay? So, the bad and wind energies go, you attain the special mental pliancy, then that mental state, again influences the body, and the wind energies that power the affliction subside. Yeah, and at that point, a wind energy of physical pliancy pervades the whole body, and the body's lack of serviceability for meditation is overcome. So now your body's very cooperative, no pain, no, whatever. No, because these people sit in meditation for hour after hour, so, they're not going to have any pain. So physical pliancy is a lightness, buoyancy, and serviceability of the body that enable it to be used for whatever virtuous purpose we wish, without pain or hardship. Okay? And then you have the physical pliancy. Then this leads to the experience of the bliss of the physical pliancy, which is a very blissful tactile sensation. So this is a bodily, by your tactile consciousness. Okay, the bliss of physical pliancy is. Then, as samadhi continues, we have the sense that the body has melted into the meditation object. Yeah. At this point, the bliss of mental pliancy is experienced. The mind is very joyous, pliant, and confident in concentration. Okay, very responsive. Following this, there is a sensation similar to placing a cool hand atop a freshly shaven head. The mental bliss decreases a little, and when it becomes stable, unchangeable bliss of concentration and unchangeable mental pliancy are experienced. Okay, so you see there's a sequence of different things going on here. At this point, serenity and access concentration have been attained. As human beings, we are desire realm beings, that's what our body is. But while meditating, our mind of access concentration is a material sphere consciousness. Okay, that's according to the Sanskrit tradition. When we did the Pali, they seem to think to be saying that the material sphere consciousness doesn't occur until you have the actual first jhana, not the access. Okay. After attaining serenity, a practitioner may follow a mundane path to gain the 5 super knowledges and rebirth in material and immaterial realms. So this is, what many non-Buddhists do. Yeah? But doing this involves insight, but what's called mundane insight, okay? Where during 7 preparatory stages, one contemplates the faults of the lower absorption and the benefits of the higher absorption, and then suppresses the level of afflictions interfering with gaining the higher one. Both Buddhists and non-Buddhists may do this. Okay. So here they, in the Sanskrit, they have these 11 different preparatory stages. Like you've attained the first jhana, then during 7 stages you prepare to go to the second jhana, by seeing the faults of the first one and so on. It would be interesting to track these 7 preparatory stages and see to what extent they correspond with, in the Pali, the different things that you're supposed to gain in that concentration before going on to the next one. It could be that they overlap quite nicely. I haven't looked at that, but possibly. Okay. Then, alternatively, Buddhists may, after attaining serenity, follow a supramundane path in which serenity is used as the basis for cultivating insight into selflessness and emptiness. Doing this is necessary for attaining nirvana and is unique to Buddhism. Yeah, because it's the insight is focused on selflessness and emptiness. So that's not of interest. That's not what the non-Buddhists are doing. So Buddhists may, just do that immediately, or they may try to actualize like the first jhana or second jhana and then go over to the supramundane insight, So I guess different people may choose to do it differently. It is not necessary to gain all 8 meditative absorptions of the material sphere and immaterial sphere consciousnesses to cultivate insight realizing emptiness. Tsongkhapa says that the union of serenity is insight, which happens, that's the demarcation of entering into the path of preparation, which is not an Arya path, as well as liberation, can be attained by cultivating insight based on serenity, that is, by depending on access concentration. However, unlike Shravakas, hearers, who are going towards arhatship, who can attain their path of seeing with access concentration, bodhisattvas have their first direct perception of emptiness and enter the bodhisattva path of seeing while meditating on the 4th jhana. Okay, so there's a difference. So we might think, well, how come the hearers can attain the hearer path of seeing based on access concentration, and bodhisattvas have to get all the way to the 4th jhana before they can do it? What's the difference in the paths that there might be this difference in the jhanas? Yeah. So it's something to think about. Yeah. Yeah. So you consider, the bodhisattvas are, they have to collect so much more merit than the hearers. So maybe some of this merit has to do with gaining up to the 4th jhana, so that, it just gives them more concentration with which to create merit. Or also, although the bodhisattvas and hearers realize the same emptiness, bodhisattvas realize it with knowledge of many different reasonings, while hearers usually learn one reasoning and just use that. So perhaps it's because bodhisattvas have to contemplate so many different reasonings that you need deeper states of concentration. Okay. Okay. At some time in their training, bodhisattvas will develop all 8 meditative absorptions of the material and immaterial realms to enhance the flexibility of their concentration. So while they don't need to do that to gain the path of seeing, before they attain Buddhahood, they do. Yeah, because bodhisattvas, Buddhas have perfected all aspects of the mind, which means also these states of meditative absorption. When human beings have attained access concentration or above, their single-pointed concentration does not vanish completely during the break times between meditation sessions. It is not manifest, however, and when they go about their daily activities, their 5 senses function. Their afflictions are weaker due to the powerful influence of samadhi, but afflictions may still arise, so practitioners must maintain mindfulness and introspective awareness in all activities. Okay? So they, there's not in meditative absorption, but in their daily life activities, but they're also not uninfluenced by it. It still influences them. The last 2 days, people have been going in and out of the meditation hall like it's a train station. I know they're going for her medicine check. Yeah. But I would like to encourage people to go pee before the sessions occur, so there's not so much traffic during sessions. Okay, where were we? Serenity becomes a Buddhist practice when supported by refuge in the 3 jewels. Okay, so we have to, just differentiate serenity practice by Buddhists and non-Buddhists. So one way is the Buddhist is supported by refuge in the 3 jewels. And then when coupled with the determination to be free and the wisdom realizing emptiness, serenity brings liberation. So there's a difference in motivation, too, between Buddhists and non-Buddhists. And when conjoined with bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing emptiness, serenity leads to full awakening. So it's interesting, here's the same quality, but it can lead to 3 different things depending on your refuge and your motivation. To ensure our practice of serenity brings liberation or full awakening, beginners should not seek meditative concentration to the exclusion of other practices. Okay? They should be sure to meditate on the defects of samsara and the possibility of attaining liberation, to cultivate a proper motivation and have a firm foundation for practicing insight. Okay. The way of generating serenity is the same for Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. Those following the Sutrayana and those practicing the first 3 classes of Tantra develop serenity in a similar manner and first attain serenity, then insight. Highest Yoga Tantra contains special techniques involving concentration on subtle objects. This makes the mind more subtle as well. A tantric practitioner who is already very familiar with meditation on emptiness, through analytical meditation, can attain serenity and insight simultaneously, because they're focusing on these very subtle objects in the body, in their visualized body. Okay? So that's a very special quality of Tantra, to be able to attain serenity and insight simultaneously. In Sutrayana, it's always first serenity, then insight. Okay? So the depth of concentration needed to uproot cognitive obscurations is much greater than that needed to overcome afflictive obscurations. For that reason, bodhisattvas cultivate amazing states of concentration. This is another reason why they have to gain all 8, states, seventh ground bodhisattvas are able to enter and leave non-dual concentration on emptiness in a split second. Okay. Their mental pliancy is so great that they can switch from single-pointedness on one mental meditation object to the same depth of concentration on another object in a moment. Other practitioners are not capable of doing this as quickly or with such ease. Okay, so bodhisattvas really, put a lot of energy into the concentration practice as well to gain these abilities. And when you think that, the super knowledges are dependent on concentration, and the bodhisattvas need to generate these super knowledges to become Buddhas and best benefit sentient beings, then you see why the concentration practices, they need to excel in that to gain the super knowledges. Okay, then Chinese Buddhism. Uh-huh.
If a bodhisattva, a person is on the bodhisattva path, has that motivation, but is more focused on wisdom and realizes this before they actually have bodhicitta, are they on the path of accumulation still?
No. The demarcation point of entering the bodhisattva path of accumulation is spontaneous bodhicitta. You can realize emptiness inferentially before entering the bodhisattva path. So the high faculty or sharp faculty disciples, they will do that. Yeah, because having a conceptual realization of emptiness like that proves to them that liberation is possible, and then on that basis they generate bodhicitta. That doesn't mean that beforehand they never meditated on bodhicitta, because if that were the case, then they would go right, if they only had renunciation, they would go right into the hearer path. So they've meditated on bodhicitta, set their goal on entering the bodhisattva path, realize emptiness inferentially, then generate spontaneous bodhicitta, enter the Mahayana path, then unite serenity and insight and enter the bodhisattva path of preparation, then keep meditating, gain the fourth jhana, enter the bodhisattva path of seeing. Okay? So like that. Okay. Then here, you'll see there's a special section on Chinese Buddhism that we haven't had so far in the book. There's a few other places in the book where we have a special section on Chinese Buddhism. The reason I put it here is because the Tibetans, one reason I put it here is because the Tibetans have a whole lot of wrong ideas about the kind of meditation the Chinese do. And they're still back in the 9th century or 8th century with the Samye debate and Hoshang Mahayana advocating blank-minded meditation. In doing research on Chinese Buddhism, I found out that around the same time as the Samye debate, in China as well, there was a huge discussion, especially among Chan practitioners, about blank-minded meditation. And there were some people advocating it and some people saying, no, that's not correct. Yeah. So it wasn't like all the Chinese do blank-minded meditation. There was also the same discussion going on in China. Also, it was interesting, several years ago, His Holiness was asked by the Dharma Drum Foundation, Master Shinyan, to teach in New York City. And they had a special event on the last day where the two masters were both up on the stage and they were discussing the Dharma and people were posing questions. It was really nice. And one of the questions came up to Master Shinyan is, do you do blank-minded meditation? And he said, absolutely not. Yeah. And then there was also the question about sudden enlightenment. Yeah, because some of the Tibetans think that the Chinese just say sudden enlightenment, poof, you're enlightened. And it came out from that discussion that the Chinese schools, some take a gradual approach, some talk about sudden enlightenment, but sudden enlightenment means a glimpse of emptiness. After you gain that glimpse, you have to go back and do the whole rest of the path and accumulate merit and gain all the other qualities. So here, enlightenment doesn't mean full enlightenment. It's kind of, how we discovered with the Pali tradition, you see Nibbana just on the path of what consists of the path of seeing. Yeah? So it could be something like that. You have some kind of glimpse of emptiness. It's hard to say. I don't know whether it's maybe the inferential understanding or if it's a direct perception. Might even be inferential. But the thing is, it doesn't eliminate all the obscurations. You still have to go back and collect merit and do all the other practices on the path. So it's not a shortcut thing. Yeah. So it's kind of like the stream enterers have a glimpse of nirvana, but they still have to, create their level of merit and do all their practices and get rid of the different afflictions in that serial manner. Yeah. So that came out in the discussion too. And I've talked with some other Chinese Buddhists, and they concur with that. Okay, so while many great meditation masters in China have written about the cultivation of serenity and concentration in general, the Tentai master Zhi, who's from the 6th century, authored some of the clearest and most important texts. And some of his texts are translated into English. They're in our library. They're published by the Kalavinka Press. My friend Venerable Dhammamitra translated from classical Chinese into English. Yeah, so very interesting to read it. So Zhi's writings are particularly important because they appeared early in the history of Chinese Buddhism, when proper meditation instruction was available to sincere monastic practitioners, but not to general Buddhist practitioners. Okay, so he helped spread it among general Buddhist practitioners. Rooted in the classical Indian texts, so he didn't make this up by himself, Zhi's comprehensive and clear instructions were a great boost to practitioners of his time and have been practiced by meditators in many Chinese schools to the present day. Presenting serenity and insight in accord with Maitreya and Asanga's texts, Zhi emphasized practicing them in a balanced fashion. So there he was, in accord with Maitreya and Asanga's texts. So Zhi's, so one book, Essentials for Practicing Serenity, Insight, and Dhyana, is a comprehensive guide to the cultivation of concentration. And so here I just outlined the topics that he deals with. Yeah. So he speaks of the prerequisite internal and external conditions for the cultivation of serenity, similar to what the other Pali tradition and Tibetan did. He emphasizes the importance of confession, purification, and renouncing desire for the objects of the 5 senses. There's that nasty desire for objects of the 5 senses appearing again. Yeah? But purification, in Chinese Buddhism, they do a lot of repentance ceremonies. Yeah, it's a very important practice. He also discusses sitting in the proper meditation position, overcoming the 5 hindrances, okay, adjusting the breath and the mind when entering meditation, adjusting the body, breath, and mind when abiding in meditation, and adjusting them when concluding a meditation session. So how to enter, abide, and leave a meditation session. His text also covers relating to sense stimuli and practicing in the break times when sitting, lying down, walking, and standing. So in the 4 physical positions, how do you practice? Regarding meditation objects, he speaks specifically of the breath, foulness of the body, love, dependent arising, and the Buddha. Okay. He describes true and false signs of dhyana absorption. So that's important to know. Yeah. And how to resolve physical disorders and imbalances, as well as hindrances from spirits. Okay. He concludes his book with realizations of the fruits for hearers and bodhisattvas. Okay, so a very comprehensive text. Then another one of his books, Ji's 6 Gates to the Sublime, speaks of a 6-fold meditation explained in Katyayani Putra's Abhidharma Vibhasha, which is about 200 BCE, Vasumitra's Mahavibhasha, that was the source of the Vaibhasika tradition, 150 CE, and Vasubandhu's Abhidharma Kosha, 4th century. So this is a meditation that's a very early meditation on the breath that they've spoken about for quite a while. And Buddha Ghosa transforms this into an 8-fold formula in the Visuddhimagga. So here's a meditation, very early one, still practiced in the Pali, in the Chinese, and also in the Tibetan. Okay, so the 6 gates are counting the breath, following the breath, stabilizing, analyzing, transforming, and purifying. This same meditation is taught in the Tibetan tradition as well. Okay, so I thought to just briefly go through it, how it is in the Tibetan tradition, how His Holiness taught it based on the Abhidharma Kosha. Okay, it's a nice meditation, and it's not just watching the breath. That you can see it goes much deeper. So the first stage is called counting the breath. Okay, so relax your body and mind before you begin. Breathe comfortably. Let your breath be at an even speed and strength. Okay, and then mentally count each cycle of the breath going out and coming in. So here, you count the breath first going out and then coming in as one breath. So it's not coming in and going out. It's going out and coming in. Okay, so you count each cycle of the breath going out and coming in until you reach 10. Don't try to count more than 10, because if you concentrate too hard, there's the danger of excitement arising from the mind focusing so tightly on the object. Because you have to be tight, 2,493, 2,494. Oh goodness, did I already say 3 or is this 4? Did I lose it? No, it's 2,495. Yeah? Okay. So don't get into that. If you count less than 10, you may not be able to overcome laxity. Like 1. Yeah, you have to get beyond 1. Okay, count clearly. Don't mix up the numbers or forget. Yeah, so 2.154, what else goes on with pi? I can't remember all the numbers of pi. You get that whole thing, so don't get distracted. mixing up the numbers. Also, try to avoid confusion over whether you're exhaling or inhaling. Yeah, doing this properly with concentration is difficult, even though the meditation sounds simple. When you inhale, think, now I'm about to breathe in. Now I'm breathing in. The inhalation is about to finish. The inhalation has finished. So you're not just watching inhale and exhale. You're watching all the different stages of it. Then as you exhale, be aware, now I'm about to breathe out. I am breathing out. The exhalation is almost finished. The exhalation has finished. So you're aware of each stage. If you concentrate well, thoughts disappear, and you're left with the radiant nature of the mind. Interesting. Okay. Then the second step is following the breath. Okay. So breathe slowly. While inhaling, follow the breath in. Imagine it is going to the throat, heart, navel, thighs, and soles of the feet. When exhaling, follow the breath as it flows out of your body. Imagine it goes a short distance outside of your nostrils before you inhale again. This is called following because the mind follows the breath. Okay? So I would recommend when you're following that it's not that you send your mind down through your body with each breath, because, unless you're breathing extremely slowly, because otherwise it goes so quickly that, you're going to start feeling very weird. Okay? So it's not like you visualize your breath here and then here, and then your mind goes down with it, and you concentrate at each part of your body, and then concentrate each part of your body coming up, all within the space of one breath. Because if you do, it's too much movement. Yeah. So just be aware, and be aware of the breath. Follow the breath as it goes there, but don't move the point on which you're focusing. Have a global focus of the breath. Okay? Then placing, breathe normally. But these can also be done as individual meditations too, or they can be done in sequence. So breathe normally, but don't concentrate on breathing in and out and in. Concentrate on the internal flow of the breath within your body, which is like a fine, still thread running from the tip of your nose to the soles of your feet. As you do so, examine the sensation the breath causes along the points of this thread within the body. Observe what happens to the body. Is it hot, cold, comfortable, uncomfortable, or what? Yeah? So the previous one was a much grosser thing of the breath. This is much more subtle. It's just a very still thread running from your nostrils to the soles of your feet, and then back up. And so you observe that still thread, and observe the body sensations along that. It's inside your body. Okay, then fourth is analyzing. Observe the breathing process. As you inhale and exhale, be aware that the breath isn't just air, but it's in the nature of all four elements: earth, water, fire, and air. Okay? And the four elemental derivatives: visible form, odor, taste, and tangible objects. So remember Precious Garland, Nagarjuna spoke of these? Observe how the mind and mental factors depend on the breath, and how the breath and the mind and mental factors are interrelated. So observe the way in which they mutually affect each other. Okay? So here your object is you're aware that it's not just the wind energy, yeah, but there's all four elements that are involved when you're breathing in and out, and the four derivatives, and so that's all form, the form aggregate, and then observe how the mind and mental factors and the form aggregate of the four elements and four derivatives, how they mutually influence each other. Yeah. So this is getting much more subtle to be able to notice in our body, yeah, if something's out of whack in our body, how it influences the mind, what kind of mental states arise, and similarly how when our mind has a certain affliction or when our mind is very peaceful, how that influences the elements in the body too. Then 5 is transforming, using the mind that has become serviceable through concentration on the breath to examine the Four Noble Truths. Okay, so yeah, you use the mind at this point. So this is a much more advanced stage here, yeah, because you have pliancy, yeah, and you're examining the Four Noble Truths. So you're beginning to combine your serenity and insight. Well, you are combining them. As a result of this, which you're doing over a long period of time, the mind is able to proceed through the 4 stages of the path of preparation: heat, peak, fortitude, and supreme dharma. Okay. Then the 6th stage is called purifying, and here the mind goes on to cultivate the path of seeing and the path of meditation. So this is just a rough overview, Clearly there's more instructions involved in it, especially the later stages. So this 6-step practice is profound. Yeah, it's going to lead you to, to awakening in the Sutrayana. The 6 meditations are progressive, the latter being harder than the preceding ones. You can spend many days on just one, or you can do several in one sitting, going all the way through the sequence of 6. It's going to be harder to do the 5th and 6th ones when you don't have serenity and insight, but you can imagine. Okay. But when you try to gain ability, in other words, when you're really serious on actualizing them, primarily do one, and when that one is stable, go on to the next. So you can kind of do them as a glance meditation, going through all 6, to remember what they are and how they work, but then mostly focus on the one that you're doing that is primary for you. Okay, so that's a meditation found in all the Buddhist traditions. And I was thinking how Ji mentions concentrating on the Buddha, and also, Maitreya mentions that. And I was thinking that, because in the Pali tradition, one of the 6 recollections is recollection of the Buddha. So that may be where the idea of using the physical form of the Buddha as your meditative object, where that came in. Yeah, because it's not just, contemplating the qualities of the Buddha, the Buddha's mind, for example, but actually bringing the Buddha to mind, contemplating the qualities of the Buddha's body, and learning to hold that, using that as your object of serenity. So that's something that could be common to the 3 traditions as well. Okay, so I'm going to read one paragraph in the 6th chapter, because we always have this thing of you stop in the middle of something, so you have to continue. So this is the higher training in wisdom, the 37 aids to awakening. And this chapter is not so long, but boy, there's a whole lot in it. Yeah, so if you want to watch all the tapes of when I taught this in, especially the four establishments of mindfulness in depth, do that before we go through this. So you have a year. Built on the foundation of the higher trainings in ethical conduct and concentration, the higher training in wisdom involves the practice of the 37 aids or harmonies to awakening and leads to insight. While not all 37 aids are considered higher training in wisdom, they all directly or indirectly contribute to the cultivation of wisdom, that understands selflessness and the four truths correctly, and thus leads to liberation. So, as you go through these seven, some are, clearly on, like the Eightfold Noble Path is included here. So some clearly belong more with higher training in ethical conduct or higher training in concentration. But they all directly or indirectly contribute to generating the wisdom of realizing selflessness. Okay. Yeah. So mark in your notes where we stopped. Write it explicitly so that we will all remember. And then I'm thinking, depending next year what's going on, November is kind of a slower month. It seems like a good month to do this. Yeah. So we have fewer guests then, and this is a more advanced teaching, so it's more for, the guests who are diligent, who really want to learn this. So I'm talking about all of you. Yeah. And and so because it's not something for newbies, then, we can really go in more depth on the topics. Okay. So now, practice. Yeah. Don't put your notes, okay, we're done with this. Put the book on the bottom of, your pile, and your notes on the top of the shelf, and, and just forget everything, really go back and review and think about this and integrate what you've learned into your practice so that it transforms your mind. Okay? There's a lot to meditate on in here. Yeah, isn't there?
Good timing before the winter retreat, too.
Yeah, it is. It is good timing right before the winter retreat.